Okay, so good morning, folks. I'm sorry it took a minute to get logged on here. Are you able to see my PowerPoint screen? Maybe you could just give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here. My name's Aaron Berger. I'm a physics engineering professor at Bucks County Community College. My background is mostly in physics and in applied physics. I've been teaching at the high school level as well as here at Bucks and in various different higher ed um, situations for about 10 or 11 or 12 years. And during that time, I've taken the opportunity to kind of think a little bit about how our students are going to benefit from talking their way through and sharing their work and how they, uh, when they are given the opportunity to talk about something, I think one of the big themes here is that gives them a better experience than just listening to someone talk at them the whole time.
Police protocol.
So I'm not sure how to mute everyone's mic, but if you're not sure if yours is muted right now, and you're not intentionally speaking it up, please go ahead and click the mute button. So one of the things that I wanted to do just to kind of have the sidebar, side chat conversation going is if you can, as we're going along here, type in to the chat what you're doing in your online classes to share out um, in terms of engaging students with the with each other and fostering some discourse and getting them to help each other to understand whether it's chemistry or physics or computer science or math. I think that there's a little bit of work that's been done in the past, but there's probably a lot more exciting things that are happening right now. And so I'd love to know what you guys are doing along these same lines. Okay, so I think that we would be remiss if we didn't kind of take stock of where we're at and how we got here in terms of being everybody's teaching online and remotely. But like I said, the thing that I am kind of interested in right now in this moment is how do we get our students to have a genuine conversation about the course material and the things that we want them to think about in the way that we would in the classroom. So this idea of having a genuine conversation about science or about the subject matter and getting them to engage with this is not a trivial thing. As I talk to other physics teachers around the country, I think this is, for me, this is the question. And how do we bridge this divide between us and the students, and how do we make it a real thing? So I'm showing you here the Chegg stock price. So on March 18th, it crashed with everyone else. But if you bought on that day, you've pretty much doubled up since then. And I think as educators, this should be something that catches our attention, right? Because what does this mean? This means probably that our students are, a lot of them, going online and sort of finding resources and filling in the gap where maybe they used to be able to talk to each other and get some more help, and maybe they're feeling isolated and like they need to just kind of get the answer and move on, right? I mean, I think that this should be concerning maybe, or at least something that catches our attention. So I just want to kind of show you that to get you thinking about what that might
The
mean for
volume's
us.
low on this.
as educators. So the other thing I want to sort of solicit from you folks is if you've come across any evidence-based strategies that have been already published and are a part of the literature already as to how do we accomplish this goal of fostering discourse in an online class. I've seen a little bit of the research, but I think that this might be an area where there's room to grow. So I'd love to see what you guys are already aware of and what you've already thought about in this regard. So I guess the thing that we want to avoid is just having students look at Chegg, find an answer, type it in, and then say, hey, look, I learned this material, on to the next thing, right? I mean, that's kind of defeats the purpose, right? At that point, then we're just really pushing paper here, and we're not really doing what we want to do, which is to teach our students some new ideas. So we're kind of forced into this format where we're online, whether or not we like it. And the two models are the synchronous and the asynchronous model for an online class. So here at Bucks, we've had some conversations about what does it mean to be a remote classroom versus a regular online class. These were distinctions that are in place. We've had online classes for some time at Bucks, and I know a lot of other institutions also have online classes. And I think that it's about what are the differences between these two models, and I think that I'm going to kind of advocate a little bit for at least a partially asynchronous model, since it sort of gives our students some space to think about what they're doing and gives them the time, maybe more importantly. So why do students take a class online? In the before times, that was often because they had a job, they had kids, they had another job, right? They had things that they that had responsibilities that weighed on their time and caused them to not be able to come to campus for a real-time face-to-face class. So I think we should keep that in mind when we're asking our students to attend synchronously to a Zoom meeting or to, like we're doing now on Blue Jeans. And I think the other point that I want to make here is when we are all here in the same place at the same time, we should really be kind of asking ourselves, why is it that we all need to be here, right now? Why can't this just be an email? Why can't this be a video that we've posted on Canvas or on Blackboard, and that you can just watch me as a talking head? So that's why we want to have a little bit of a conversation said a few more words here. But I think that we really need to rethink if you're still in the mindset of a purely a lecture type classroom. This is going to be a really challenging environment, because you can record your lecture and post it online, but there's a lot of other lectures that are recorded and you could post online. And again, you just want to think about what is it that we're bringing to the table by being here and now, because that's really the most expensive thing, is our time. And I think that as the value proposition for college students thinking about paying high dollars for tuition, this is something that we should probably take seriously. So the main thing that I want to discuss together today is this idea of how do we get our students to have the next best thing to actually being in the classroom. And so I want to start with this, the way that we do it in the classroom when we teach physics. I'm not sure if anybody else is a physics teacher, but a lot of my thinking about this has been influenced by something called modeling physics. And this is a kind of a guided inquiry process where, we're kind of doing a lot of Socratic questioning, and we're letting our students do some sense making. And so, that happens when we, maybe we prompt them with some ideas, or we give some introduction, but then, we set up a scenario, or we give a problem, and we say, why don't you guys talk about it as a small group, and after we'll kind of talk about it and draw some things out on some small student whiteboards at your desks, like you're seeing here in the middle. Usually the way that I run this in the classroom will be that they'll work as a small group. We'll kind of circulate. We'll talk about it. We can point to, hey, here, this looks good. This doesn't look good. Why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? And then, after we've kind of had some time to work in small groups, often what we'll do is have one of the groups come to the front of the room, or sometimes we'll do it in a circle. We call this one a board meeting, and just kind of collectively have this conversation. I think that the words that are coming out of our students' mouths are telling us a lot about how much they understand, and I think that's an important process, an important part of the process of learning the physics, or learning whatever, math. I think that this applies to any STEM subject, I think, equally. So we should think about, how do we replicate that sort of high touch, highly dynamic process in an asynchronous format, or if we're doing things synchronously, how do we even do that online? So these are just some ideas and some ways that I've been working online for a little bit now, to try to foster this kind of discourse and this kind of communication amongst our students. So I think that probably everyone is familiar with the Zoom meetings, or some kind of synchronous video meeting, where we sort of get together like we are now, and maybe there's a speaker like I'm speaking and drawing on a whiteboard. But how do we make that a interactive process for the students? So I think that there's a few technologies out there that can make this a little bit more interactive. But of course, the low-tech way is to just have, just to do this, just hold up right? I'm sure that everyone's done this now, where you hold up a piece of paper and you say, hey, this is what I did. What did you do? And that's kind of the first order way of thinking about this. And that's fine. That's the lowest tech, lowest cost way of communicating our work and our thinking about a given problem. The sort of next iteration of that, for me at least, on maybe March 16th, was I took my iPhone and I set it on a diaper box, and I said, here's my document camera, and I mirrored that to my computer screen, and that way at least we could see in real time what I'm writing. The next iteration of that is this little guy. You can get one of these for about $20 on Amazon, and same thing. It's a document camera, but takes up less space than a diaper box. So that's great, right? We can at least talk to each other in real time that way if we have something that can function like a document camera, like an iPhone. But as I'm having conversations with students, we have like tutoring center hours, basically, where or office hours, where we're interacting with our students in real time. And so Some of those students will come to me with a question that they've written out, and we want to interact, right? We want to do that same thing that we were doing on the whiteboards. So the problem that you run into is when you go to point at their work and say, hey, what'd you do here, or move this vector over there, that's a little harder to do if you're a version of this, right? We have to sort of describe, okay, drag this up there and move it here. So it takes longer. So there's a couple of technologies that are going to make life a little bit easier in that regard. The one that I'm still kind of exploring is called Jamboards. This is a Google product, and I think that it's mostly going to work for mobile devices. So think of one of these or one of these, but I'm not. We may be able to get this as something that we can put on a desktop. But basically, it gives us the same ability to write. So this is this one in the middle here is electric field diagram that I drew on a Jamboard, and I think that the students. What's cool about this program for Jamboards is the students can get on here and they can edit it and they can collaborate in real time. And there's even a little laser pointer they can kind of push around, and it gives us a way to talk in real time about what we're working on. So I think that this is a nice tool. It's free. What's a little confusing about Jamboards is one of them is a $10,000 smartboard device that you would hang on the wall in the classroom, but the other thing is just the app that powers that, and that's something that we can use on our mobile devices. So the synchronous part of this is important, I think, as we're thinking about how can we be there for our students and how can we help them in real time to get their questions answered. That's certainly an important part of what we have to do now as we're teaching our classes. But I think that what maybe has been lost is a little bit of this idea that the students can't always be online in real time, and sometimes maybe they can and they just don't want to. I've talked to a handful of students. We have a AAPT, it's a physics teacher call every Tuesday night, and a couple of weeks ago we had students who were physics students who came in and just kind of gave us, did a question and answer session, and after that conversation, it became clear to me that they really don't like Zoom, and I think in my mind then the asynchronous model becomes a little bit more attractive, and so for the following reasons, I think that if we want to foster this discourse and carry on this conversation in as close a way as we can to what I described earlier with the modeling and the whiteboards, we can take advantage of, here at Bucks we use the Canvas discussion boards, and we can do this asynchronously and carry on a kind of a nice conversation. And actually, this is something that we've been doing for a little while, even in the before times. So I think that, certainly we've thought more about how do we improve this process. So one of the things that I want to just put out there as an idea is that it might be that there are actually some advantages to having an asynchronous discussion board kind of conversation as opposed to a real-time whiteboarding session like what we would do in the classroom. And one of the reasons I say that is just because over time I've sort of noticed that some of these students, they have opportunity to post. So I'll have them post their work from a particular problem and problem from their homework, and I'll have them do either a voiceover or a video that sort of walks us through their solution for that problem. And so again, having them talk as they're thinking about this, I think that this helps them to learn the subject that they're studying, whether it's physics or math or chemistry. And so when they go through that process, even though we can't give them that live real-time feedback when we're doing it in this forum, what's an advantage is that they have a little more time, right? I mean, it's the yin and the yang of this. They have the time to work a little more carefully and make things a little neater. So I think as long as they're being honest with themselves about, hey, I didn't look this up online, but this is really my work. This can be a really valuable process. I've had some student work that's been posted on these discussion boards that just is amazing how great a job they do at describing their understanding. So I think we shouldn't discount the potential for this to be an advantage, right? I mean, how do we play this to our advantage? So the other part of this that I'm sort of struggling with, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on what more we can do to sort of bring back this collaborative environment where the students are working together. Obviously they can't sit next to each other at a whiteboard and work on it in real time together. But what's the next best thing? So in Canvas, I've started to experiment a little bit with group work a little bit more than I had been before. For lab assignments in particular, I've started to have the students turn in a group lab report. And I think that this gives them that push, that first initial push that's needed to start to reach out to each other and communicate with one another. Because, again, we're all sort of isolated right now, especially, our students. And it might be, to me, the worst case scenario is a student is just working on their own and they feel like they have nowhere else to turn but Chegg or Google to get help. So I don't think we can overstate how important it is that they're able to work together and have that connection where they can help each other and talk in their own language and do this process of sense making. So I've started that with the lab assignments, and the only reason I haven't done it with the discussions is because I can't figure out how to do it on Canvas, and I'd love to know what our thoughts are, or if there's any ideas that are out there that would get us closer to the ideal here. So what I'd love to do is have students work in small groups, and then come up with some solutions to some problems and post them to their discussion boards. Right now, what I'm doing instead is it's an individual post where each of them will solve a problem from the homework. And I've started to suggest, let's pick specific problems that we know are going to have high discussion value, right? It's not just a plug and chug kind of problem, but it's something where maybe you've got to draw a diagram and multiple steps, right? The kind of thing that you really have to think through. These are the things that are going to be good fodder for conversation. So right now I just have them individually posting, and I think that the problem with this, where this kind of fails, is if we think about how we learn in a classroom and what that conversation looks like in the classroom, it's not a serial process, right? It's not that you start here at the top of the page and work your way down and keep reading, right? But it's I talk to somebody over here, I talk to somebody over there. Hey, how did you do this? Right? The information is coming from different people kind of at the same time. And I think that this sort of serial model of the discussion board doesn't necessarily help us if we want to build this process of sense making. So I think that to the extent that we can try to replicate here, one of the things that I've tried to do is have them, and I'm still working on how best to do this, but if instead of saying, let's work on problems 1, 3, 5, and 7 in the discussion board, it should probably be like a threaded reply. Like if you're working on problem 1, you're going to post here. If you're working on problem 3, you're going to post here. And at least that way, we can kind of be looking at the same thing and not scrolling through to try to find a particular problem. I think that maybe kind of organizes the information a bit more like how we would when we do the conversation in class. So again, I'm interested to hear what folks are doing in that regard. That's my main worry right now, and thing that we're, I think, kind of struggling to do this better in our classrooms. So just want to plug a couple of technology items and resources, and then I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say about this idea of how do we get a good discourse going online. So we still use Halliday for our calculus-based physics courses, but I think everyone, hopefully you're aware of OpenStax. If you're not, these are open education resources, and they have some really great, the physics books are great. They also have astronomy. I think they have biology and anatomy and physiology. There's all kinds of, all the maths subjects are also available here. I've started using Expert TA for online homework. It's way cheaper than the publisher products. We switched to Wiley. I hope there's not any Wiley reps on right now. But we switched from Pearson to Wiley a while ago, and the price went up and the quality went way down in terms of what was available on their online resources. So this has been a really nice product for me. They've been super helpful whenever I have questions. If you're talking to them, ask for Robbie White. I don't work for them. Okay, I don't work for OpenStax. They're not paying me for this. But they've been a really nice one to work with for some time now. And they also have biology and astronomy and physics for Expert TA. And so this is what I'm using, in addition to some questions from Halliday and from other like modeling worksheets and other resources, again, for fodder for that conversation. So there's some other tech tools that we can think about using for labs. Again, I'm a big advocate for inquiry and guided inquiry type labs. One of our professors went into the lab recently and recorded one of our oscillator.
Okay, so here's a quick tutorial on how to do video.
I'm just going to show you real quick what this looks like. So you can kind of let this bounce around a little bit here. You let this mass bounce around and you can record. So this is using Pasco Capstone. And then you can plot the data and you can fit a sine wave to it, and you can get the period, you get the spring constant. So there's a ton of recorded experiments. I mean, this one was recorded by someone here at Bucks, but there's a ton of these that are recorded that are available from, I know Vernier has them. I think some of the other lab equipment supply companies have posted videos like this. So that's one of the things that we can get a little more real with here as we're remote. And another one that we've been using is the video analysis is just projectile motion. So you can get a video physics app, or you can do it in Pasco Capstone. And again, you can plot position time. You can learn all about projectile motion that way. And the one last thing, I'm going to see if I can share this other screen. This one's really cool if you've not heard of GloScript or VPython. This is a simulation that a site where students can use VPython to do coding. Okay, so let me see if I can. Where's my? Sorry. I like this better in Zoom. Okay, so here's Trinket. Can you guys see that now? Thumbs up. Yeah. Okay. So Trinket's a really cool site. It's free. there is a version of this if you want the students to be able to upload their code, and if you want to be able to like interact with their code, then it's $10 a month. I've started working with this site more, and for $10 a month, I'm happy to do it if I'm able to see their work. And there's a couple of other perks that you get for that. You can make your course private on here, which is kind of nice. So anyway, this is I want to show you this for a few reasons. This is a great place to easily pull in content from tons of different sources. And you may say, well, why not just use a Canvas module for this? Well, you can, but in Canvas, you're not going to get this functionality where you can pull in things from Python or from this VPython, it's called, or GloScript is the name of the coding language. So we can have three-dimensional vector simulations. We can post notes that we've gathered from different places, or I think this is one that I made myself for vectors. We can have the PhET simulation show up here, and it's all in one place, right? And you're not kind of clicking through to see what are the different resources that are kind of layered into a Canvas module. So I really like this one. Here's a cross-product 3D simulation. And so it's super easy. You can put videos. It's super easy to edit this. If you just go into the editor, you can just drag and drop.
No, I'm still listening, Hayati. I'll confirm.
And it'll show up for you pretty easily.
طيب انت بتشرب اكتر معك.
I think somebody has an open mic. So the one other thing that I want to show you with Trinket is just that the students, so you can make an assignment on here. I teach physics, so I haven't done too much with this. We started to experiment with it a little bit in our face-to-face classes. But you can make an assignment where the students will, start from some skeleton code. So maybe computer science folks would be interested in this. They can start with a skeleton code, and then they can edit it and work on it. And when they're done, they can upload it, and you can see their code, and you can run it all in this browser, all in your browser without having to install anything. So this supports a whole bunch of different computer languages, not just GloScript or VPython is one that's specific to physics, but there's Python and there's other languages that are supported here that probably would be of use to computer science folks. So I think that's basically it. I want to save the time to have conversation with you guys, right? So since we're here in real time, why are we here? I mean, I guess the only other things I was going to say are just that, we need to come up with some improvements maybe to Canvas. And, I wish that I could sit in the room with the developer and say, hey, I want this, this, and this. Can we have it, soon, instead of putting in a request and maybe getting it 6 months from now, if ever. And I think the other two comments that I want to make, and then I want to hear from you guys, is how can we work together? I think the thing that we need to think more about now more than ever is how do we work together to develop assignments that are going to give this authentic experience for our students, right? Because we have this Chegg, and we know that anything that's a publisher created content, or even if it's us, just at Bucks County Community College, if you look on Chegg or Course Hero, there's exams and labs that I've personally or my colleagues have personally written, and they're up there, and there's nothing you can really do about it. I mean, you can fight that battle, but I think that what we have to try to think about is how do we innovate in real time to make an authentic assignment that's going to be something that's fresh and that's just not on there if you're looking for it. And finally, I think if we can be there for our students and just communicate with them and be there for them in real time when we need them, then this is kind of all we can do. So I'd love to know, what you guys think of all the above. I haven't been following along here with the chat, but please feel free, oh wow, we have 60 people. I didn't realize we almost have 60 people. But if anybody wants to chime in here, I'd love to hear from you guys because we're all here now.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
It's Jessica. I teach at Rowan College of South Jersey, the Gloucester County campus. And
Okay.
we actually are buying kits from Carolina, and I teach micro. So the students are culturing the bacteria at home. They're plating out things. They're doing pretty much everything that they would be doing in the classroom. And my comment was that I'm actually getting way more interaction because usually the strongest person in the lab group will be completing the lab. Everybody else just follows along and they just, write down the answers. And this way, every student actually has to be engaged. And what I'm getting are the comments are from people now. I play with toys, so I don't, it's not, they're getting these sets thinking they're like a Tinker toy set from childhood, and they are so psyched about it. And that's the feedback that
awesome.
I've been getting about the micro kits.
In a microbiology class.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So,
Yep.
yeah, I guess I didn't mention, we're doing we've been doing lab kits for the electronics courses, especially for a little while now, or for the second semester physics classes. And I totally agree with you. I've had that same experience, and again, I think this is a silver lining is that, you can't rely on your lab partner to do the work. I wonder if you've had any trouble. I guess there's not much we can do about it, but one of the problems is sourcing these things, right? I mean, if everybody goes online to buy them at the same time, and the cost is also a problem of them for this, but. I think that if we find ways around those challenges, I definitely think that we shouldn't just rely on simulations or videos that other people have taken for us of the lab equipment. I mean, some of that stuff is really useful, but nothing beats a real measurement, right? How about anybody have anything? What are you doing to like foster this conversation with your students? I'd love to know, and I'm sure probably you're really good at.
Hey, Aaron, this is Doug Vardakis. I teach at Monco. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Very well. Thank you very much. It's great to hear that other people are struggling with exactly the same things that I'm struggling with. Well, it's not great to hear it, but it's it sounds like we're all working towards the same thing. Just a couple of items that we've been researching a little bit more deeply. So labs and assessment seem to be the two toughest things to deal with. And then the next thing is like real-time problem solving, with students if you don't have a tablet. But regarding the first two, we found it's a pretty low-cost tool. It's called Pivot Interactives. It's like $5 for high school students and $10 for college students for a semester. And it has the ability to do real time, like changing variables, changing measurement points. So it's a very interactive, lab, and it's got full gamut for physics 1 and 2 types of labs. So we're investigating that, and we're actually piloting it this summer, but it's showing some great promise. I just want to let folks know that. Regarding assessment, I'm still struggling with that, how do we really randomize? We keep on talking about the same issues you do. It's so easy to find physics, chemistry related problems online. So using some of the tools that will randomize answers and things of that nature, they're okay, but this is actually, it's a really tough problem to solve.
It is, yeah. So I think either one of these we could spend that's a whole other conversation, right? I guess I'd just make a couple of points on the assessment part. If you look at what the AP folks have done, I've kind of been taking my cues from them, and they've done some good things and some bad things, right? I think we try to learn the lessons that the problems that they've had with students, trying to upload and the time limits that they've given them to upload the work. So you want to try to avoid that, right? And as far as the problems go, I think this is something that we can work together as physics teachers and professors, and we can kind of come up with some things that just aren't out there yet. So that's not to say that as soon as you release it into the wild, it's like driving a car off the lot, right? It loses its value instantly in terms of being an authentic thing that they can't just Google and find the answer. But in my very limited experience with giving exams in this kind of format, what I've found is that if you have conceptual questions that are open-ended, and you probably know some of the resources that you can dig into old textbooks. Peer instruction has some really good conceptual equation or conceptual exam questions. And those have been. It's funny because you can tell when you grade the exams, like, oh, everyone got this one, this really hard problem. Like, there's no trouble with that. But here's a conceptual question that's just cross product angular momentum. Which way is it? And you see that more like what you would expect if you gave an exam in class, as far as the average on that. The pivot interactives I've seen, I think they're kind of like a video analysis, right?
It is video, but it's also interactive. So it's got part of the, like, somebody actually performing on equipment, things that you might see with other providers as well. In addition, it's got a very interactive component where students can change, like, let's say, weights or angles for light or, index of refract, whatever, right? So there's a lot of interactive parts to it, which is what we really like about it. Is the participation piece is the toughest part of it. And it seems to give that participation piece back to the student.
Sure. Yeah, and I think, again, assessment and labs are just, they're a whole other. That's a whole conversation, right? And I guess to me the toughest nut to crack has been this one about how do we have that kind of authentic conversation. I mean, you probably had the experience when you were in school. We had the physics, and you can go there and it's just other physics students working on physics problems. How do we replicate that process online? This is the thing I've seen very little in terms of how do we do that?
There's somebody who's not muted, which is really making it hard to hear you.
Sorry.
So it's the 706 phone number person.
I think that we're just.
So one of the things that you could do is you can create little breakout rooms for students to get together to actually interact during a class. So that is something that is available through most of the video conferencing packages. I haven't tried that yet. I'm actually going to, again, try that over the summer, where you get students to break out groups of 3 or 4 where they'll work in like a lab team, each of them. You give them like an hour, hour and a half, and then they could come back, to the main conference, after they've worked together.
Yeah. And I think that's something we try to encourage them to do. They have GroupMe. I don't know, I'm not even familiar with GroupMe, but we wanted them to work together, right? I mean, we want them to find these spaces, whether they're real or virtual, to work together and be in the same place.
Yeah,
I'm using breakout rooms in Zoom really effectively with my statistics and discrete math students. And one thing that really helps them is giving them something to hold accountable to doing it. So we're creating these little quizzes in Canvas, and then they all get to work on the quiz together, and it has to do with the work that they're supposed to be doing in groups, and just it seems to make them talk about it. So that's just something new that I'm trying this summer that seems to be working.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks, Mary Catherine. And hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I think that you've really taught us a lot, leading up to this about how to do this kind of thing. And I think that there's real value in doing it synchronously, but I think that the student feedback is just, a lot of them are looking for that asynchronous. And
yeah, and I would say I'd agree with that, Aaron, but I'd say there's two sides to that, because then I had a student in my discrete class from this past semester that was so grateful that I kept going with the synchronous meetings, because for him that helped hold him accountable to being there and learning the material. So I think I think there's both sides to it. I think there's students that work effectively both ways. So just to keep that in mind, that I've also heard from students that are grateful when you continue to have those synchronous meetings.
I also found that the synchronous meetings gave the students a place to come to. It was almost a sense of normalcy, that they had a discrete block of time. They didn't have to worry about work or anything, because they probably had that time set aside at the beginning of the semester for the class. And it gave them some sense of normalcy. It also enables you to ask real-time questions and solve real-time questions. You could use the whiteboard to share, going both ways with Zoom. So I found that I think they also seemed to be overwhelmed with all of the emails and all of the time management requirements for asynchronous learning. I know I'm taking an online course now at Rutgers for the last couple of years, and you have to be organized and you have to manage your time. I teach workforce, and those students really have very, very poor time management skills, and they felt overwhelmed. So the synchronous instruction kind of, I think, grounded them a little bit. I think it depends on, how independent your students are.
What I found I teach chemistry. My synchronous sessions never had the whole class, because what I found with my students, many picked up extra hours at work. So those times they had set aside for class weren't real anymore to them, or they have children at home, and now those kids are home and they're using the computer to do their schoolwork, which was all synchronous for the younger kids. So we use Big Blue Button and Zoom. We use Canvas where I am. And that was great. And I agree with whoever said the normalcy. Everybody brought up, it's so good to see everybody. It feels like we're in the classroom again. And because this course transitioned to online that had never been online before, that was a huge component, I think, for the students who succeeded through the course. I'll mute now.
I agree with you, Julie. One of the other things that I did is I recorded all my synchronous classes, but instead of recording a 3-hour block, which is impossible to watch, I took a lot of great care to break my 3-hour classes into 10-minute, 12-minute pieces and record that 10, 12 minutes, go over, whatever you're going over, index of refraction, for instance, do 10, 12 minutes on it, stop the recording, take a breath for a couple minutes, go to the next. And that way, those who were doing asynchronous, and I was meticulous about how I labeled each and every recording so they knew exactly what they were looking at for each recording. I think that helped a lot for those that had to do it asynchronously. So just an idea.
Many of my students also commented that one of the biggest helps was having recordings of the classes, and that was almost universal because I did a questionnaire, and that was really interesting.
Yeah, I was very thankful that I did. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was very thankful I did that. I got the same responses back on my questionnaire, like, thank you very much for recording them. That was great. Thank you for keeping them small and organized. So, yeah, I got that same feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, for the asynchronous part, I actually converted all my presentations to YouTube because a lot of our kids don't have PowerPoint. They used it at school. And they loved being able, I have a channel now, so I feel so cool, but they loved being able to just go to YouTube, pull it up on their phones. I also use something called EduCreations, which they let you have for free for the spring. And it's like a virtual whiteboard, but you can narrate yourself doing example problems. So rather than just relying on other people's tutorials, because they're used to me showing them problems, I would make like a 5 to 10 minute, 2 or 3 problems, post it in Canvas, and they could comment and come back to me with questions about that. So there were lots of, it was very nice in the spring because everything was free. It's not going to be free in the fall, I don't think. So for our students who are financially very needy, most come out of Philadelphia. I teach at Manor College, so we have a lot of students who come out of the city who don't have all those extra funds for different resources. So being free was huge.
Yeah, I think EduCreations is one that we've used a little bit in the past, and I mean the point about the cost of these things. I mean, this is a significant investment, right? This is, but I said when this came in the mail just a couple of days ago, this is a game-changing technology also, because I can write in Canvas. If you use SpeedGrader, it works in the app on the iPad, doesn't work on the website. But on the app, you can write right on there. You can give them the real. I think I was writing more than than they were on their lab reports because I was so excited to be able to write on their paper again. But it's a real problem. You know, the cost, it's a barrier, and I think we need to be aware of how that's bifurcating our student population. So I don't know what our time requirements are here. But I'm happy to keep chatting until for a few minutes because I think that you know, we're all feeling a little isolated here, and unless we need the space for another meeting, happy to carry on the conversation. Or you know, if you have to go, I'm sure you guys want to come to other talks. If you know, just grab my email and feel free to drop me a note. I think there's a lot of work to be done and a lot of things that can be done collaboratively. We can kind of crowdsource some of this work. So I'm happy to do it, but also happy to hear any other comments, questions you guys might have.
There is another session that's going to be starting up shortly, but thank you very much. This again, just the collaboration at the end is so helpful.
Yeah. Thanks, Doug, and thanks for your input. I really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for coming and listening, and I hope you found it helpful.
Thank you.